welcome to the Embassy of Mexico. It's a pleasure to have you here. The level of cooperation is an excellent one, and it has been growing in terms of trade, investment, but also at the political level. Exchanges at the highest level have taken place. We are both countries right now members of the Security Council in the United Nations. So we have a political, economic, and cultural relation. It's not only economic. On the economic field, I think we still have a huge potential to increase the volume of exchanges. We are already exporting several products to the Emirates, but we need to make sure that people understand that we have many more things to offer. Some people here may not know that Mexico is the 7th largest exporter in the world. Mexico exports more on its own than any other Latin American country. And we have exports on manufacturers, not only on agricultural products. We are exporting cars and parts, and we have a huge industry in electronics and technology advanced products. And I think that's what will bring the relationship to a much higher level in the coming 3-4 years. The number of visits of officials in both ways, officials from the Emirates and officials from Mexico, has increased rapidly, especially in the last couple of years. Only a few days ago, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico was visiting the Emirates, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Emirates visited us last year. So this is a proof of what the importance of we attach both sides to this relationship. Well, as I mentioned to you, there are many products we are already exchanging, many more that we could increase production. When it comes to products, specific products, the most popular one here, when we talk about food, is the avocado. The Mexican avocado is one of the best in the world, if not the best, and we are seeing that. But many other products, chickpeas and legumes, and obviously other drinks. And as I mentioned, the challenge is to move into more sophisticated manufactured products that will have a greater added value. And I think it's going to happen in the coming days and months. But something which is important is that we are not looking into the relationship between the United Arab Emirates and Mexico strictly as a bilateral relationship, because we are realizing increasingly, and I mean not only the governments but also the business sector, that both countries have a hub vocation. Mexico is a hub to export not only to us, but also to the region, and particularly to the North American market, which is one of the most important ones in the world. And the Emirates is a hub to export into the region increasingly, because it facilitates the operations. We can do it not only with the immediate neighbors of the Emirates, but also to China, to India, and other places. It's a very convenient location for our own exports that we intend to use. So the relationship will grow because we will use this facility. In the case of Mexico, just think about a country that may have the advantages that we have, and it would be difficult to find. We have a huge border with the United States, which is one of the biggest markets in the world, 3,000 kilometers. And we have access both to the Pacific and the Atlantic. We also have a very good access and relationship with the South America, particularly Central America, but also through the Pacific Alliance. We are building a very strong group together with Colombia, Chile, and Peru. Other members of the group may be, in the coming years, Ecuador, and even Brazil and Argentina are working very closely with us. So Mexico has this geographic location and relationships with this neighbor that I think are particularly attractive for Emirati investments. Well, once again, there are two sides of, or two angles to respond to your question. The first one is what you are doing, your country is doing in my country, in terms of a strictly bilateral relationship, and it's very important because you are supporting the economy, the sustainable development, through investments in different sectors. One of them, which is very important to us, is tourism, and the Emirates is investing on that. But you are investing also in other manufacture processes. The second angle, which is probably even more important for the Emirates, is the possibility of investing in Mexico to produce products that could be exported from Mexico to the North America region or other parts in Latin America. So making sure that there are companies that are located in Mexico and the product is going to be known as made in America. America is not only the US, America is the whole continent, and in this particular case we may refer to North America, made in North America if you like, and that will give you access. Mexico is a country, probably the one who has the largest number of free trade agreements. We have actually 43 agreements with different countries, or agreements, strictly speaking, we're talking about 13 free trade agreements, but covering 43 countries, because it includes obviously the US and Canada, but also several Latin American countries, all the European countries. We are right now negotiating additional free trade agreements, one with Ecuador in our region. The second one is being negotiated with South Korea. And we just started a conversation with the United Arab Emirates so that we may also initiate the negotiations to have a free trade agreement between our two countries. I don't think any other country has so many free trade agreements with probably the majority of the developed countries and the biggest markets in the world. So the potential is huge for a much more increased relationship. The challenge we both have is to look at the distance as something that could be very easily solved or compensate, because it's obvious that we have a long distance physically between the two countries, but there are many ways to reduce that. In an era of globalization, distance is not the most important part. In addition to that, we have a direct flight from Mexico to Dubai through Emirates. It's both a flight for passengers and also cargo. It's the only flight, the only direct flight we have to the region, and we can use that connection to increase the relationship. So if we see Mexico not as far as it looks, but as close as it should be in terms of capturing the opportunities of doing business, and then you add a very good political relationship, we share very many values. I will give you just one example of cooperation, particularly because you mentioned the importance of sustainable development. Mexico has been a very active member of the international community on many topics. We are obviously supporting the development goals, the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And in that context, I think we share common interests, particularly when it comes to the fight against climate change. We hosted a COP in 2010, on which we were able to relaunch the negotiations that led to the Paris Agreement later on. And you will host a COP next year here in the Emirates. This is a very important process because, as you know, climate change is not only an environmental problem, but it is a change in the model of development of all countries. You need to involve people, you need to transform the way you produce, the way you consume. It affects not only the industry, it affects agriculture, living in the cities, etc. So it's a huge effort on which we share a vision and a level of ambition. That's exactly what I was mentioning, looking at each other with knowledge or being fully convinced that there are opportunities that we have not yet used to the maximum extent possible. For that, you need not only the commitment of the governments and relevant authorities, but you need the business sector. And the business sector, in the case of Mexico, is a community which has been looking almost exclusively to the North American market because it is very close. It is a market they know very well, but they need to realize that they should, because of several reasons, they should diversify their investments and their exports. It is important, especially after the lessons that we had because of the pandemic and also because the crisis with the attack of the Russian Federation to Ukraine. People is realizing that we need to diversify. The world has become smaller, is more globalized, and we need the business sector, the Mexican business sector, to fully understand that. And I can give you the example of the last few days on which several groups of businessmen, hundreds of businessmen were present in the Emirates, mainly because of the Expo, which was, by the way, a huge success for the United Arab Emirates, and in this case, facilitate participation. All delegations of businessmen I have welcomed here in the Emirates, both in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, are telling me that the visit has opened their eyes about new possibilities. They have seen that it is easy to do business here, even though there is a distance, a physical distance. The way of doing business in the Emirates is very familiar to them. They didn't know that before coming. And it is important that they can send the message back to other colleagues, other businessmen in Mexico, and they start to focus. There is one in particular who told me, just to give you an example, that he used to concentrate his exports to the North American market, about 75, 80%, and the rest to Europe, maybe 5% to Latin America. Right now, he started to look into the Emirates and start presenting options, some products, some agro-food. And in 3 years, 5 years maximum, he has already 5% of his own portfolio, only in the Emirates. And he's expecting that portfolio to grow probably to 20-25% in the next 2-3 years. Because there is a huge potential, as I mentioned before, because it's not only selling products to the Emirates, but it is selling products to the region. It's indeed a pleasure to have you. I hope that you will have an opportunity to visit an exhibition we have downstairs. If you allow me, I will show it to you. It's a very famous Mexican modern painter who recently died, but it's one of the best in my country. And let me close with that. I think the cultural program that the embassy can facilitate beyond what we have done at Expo 2020 is going to be also a priority. I think people had a positive image of Mexico. They have souvenirs of through television, through music, films. But I want them to be also very much aware of the new artists that are emerging, whether it is writers, whether it is painting, whether it's singers, and hopefully the embassy will continue to be very active on the cultural field. That will allow us to be closer to the people for the time being mainly in Abu Dhabi, but we will find ways to also be present in the rest of the 7 Emirates.